What if I told you that you don't need as many watches as you have? There are watches that do everything. In this video, I'll tell you about 10 of them, and by the time I am done, you're going to wonder why you ever needed a collection at all. Number 10, Marathon. The Canadian Armed Forces issued this watch. Then, the US military wanted it. That's about as straightforward an endorsement as a watch can receive. The Marathon GSAR, which stands for Government Search and Rescue, is a 41mm Swiss-made automatic built to Canadian government specifications. It runs a Sellita SW200, one inside a 316L stainless steel case rated to 300 meters. That's 30 atmospheres. You could take it to a depth most recreational divers will never reach and it wouldn't notice. But the real trick is the lume. Most watches use superluminova, which charges in light and fades over the night. The GSAR uses tritium gas tubes, sealed glass capsules filled with a low-level radioactive gas that glows continuously without needing to charge at all. Orange tube at 12 o'clock, green tubes everywhere else. In complete darkness, you don't need to press anything. The dial just glows. Marathon says the tubes maintain serviceable brightness for up to 20 years, at which point you send the watch in, they replace the dial and hands with fresh tubes, and you're good for another 2 decades. Think about that. The watch you buy today could still be glowing in 2045. Your phone battery will be dead by Tuesday. The collectors on Watch You Seek describe wearing the GSAR as strapping on something that communicates a very specific thing about your priorities. It's thick. It's not subtle. It won't slide under a dress shirt cuff. But the people who wear them tend not to care, because the GSAR is a tool built to over-specified standards, not a fashion statement, and there's a confidence in wearing something that was designed for people whose lives might depend on it. Picture someone out on a nighttime search and rescue operation. No phone, no extra gear, temperature at 0, and they need to know the time. They can't charge anything. They can't hit a button to activate a backlight. The tritium just glows. It always glows. That is the problem the GSAR was engineered to solve. Not the problem of, I'd like a nice watch. The problem of, I need to know the time when everything else has failed. The price sits around $1,300 to $1,500. No brick-and-mortar retailers. You buy directly from Marathon's website, and there's something almost fitting about that. A watch with no retail theater, no display cases, no salespeople, sold directly to the people who actually want it. That's the kind of trust a tool watch earns. But the next one? It earns it differently, by being nearly impossible to scratch. Number 9, Shin 856 UTC. In Frankfurt, 1961, a former Lufthansa pilot named Helmut Shin began making pilot's watches for the people he used to fly with. 60-some years later, the company he built is still doing the same thing, engineering watches for people who actually need them to work. The Shin 856 UTC is the clearest expression of that philosophy. Start with the case. Shin takes ordinary stainless steel, which has a hardness of roughly 220 Vickers, and puts it through a patented hardening process they call tegiment. The result is steel with a surface hardness of 1,200 Vickers. For reference, that's harder than most knife blades. In practice, it means collectors on Watch Crunch describe wearing the 856 for years and finding it virtually scratch-free. The tegimented bracelet has a slightly strange quality in the hand. It is not silky like polished steel, more like paper, grainier and darker. It's the texture of something that will not apologize for itself. Then there's the copper sulfate capsule. Hidden in the case, at roughly the 7 o'clock lug position, is a small crystal of copper sulfate. It absorbs moisture from the air inside the case. As it does its job over time, it changes color from white to blue, which tells you when it needs replacing roughly every 5 years, coinciding with a standard service interval. Shin fills the case with argon gas to further protect the movement. The movement is a Swiss ETA, 2893-2, a reliable workhorse used across the industry. And the whole setup is anti-magnetic to 80,000 amperes per meter, one of the highest ratings available in a mechanical watch at this price. The 856 UTC specifically adds a second time zone. A small yellow hand circles an inner 24-hour ring, so you can read a home city time and a local time simultaneously. Straightforward, useful, ugly in the best way. It's a watch that looks like it means business because it was engineered by people who've never made a watch that doesn't. There's something almost philosophically German about the 856 UTC. No decoration, no statement, just solutions. The case capsule that changes color to tell you when it needs replacing is the perfect distillation of what Shin builds. Not a spectacle, a system. And systems are why the watch forums that discuss it longest are usually engineering forums, not luxury watch forums. Price is around $2,100 to $2,300 new. Not cheap for a watch with an ETA movement. But you're not buying the movement, you're buying the case engineering, and nobody else is selling that. Shin built a watch that refuses to fail. The next watch built a watch that refuses to age. But before I move on, I want to tell you about something Victorinox did with a tank. Victorinox INOX carbon. The INOX. Inoxidable, French for stainless steel, went through 130 durability tests before Victorinox released it. Most of those tests were brutal. The watch was frozen in ice, then hit with a blowtorch, dropped repeatedly from a height of 10 meters, put through 90 minutes in a washing machine at full cycle. And then, for reasons that feel like they involved someone at Victorinox corporate having a very bad or very good day, they drove a 6.4-ton tank over it. Still, it was ticking. The 2024 carbon automatic version is where this story gets interesting for an EDC audience. The case uses a carbon composite material wrapped around a Sellita SW200, one automatic movement with about 48 hours of power reserve. It's 41 millimeters wide, 200 meters water resistant, and uses a sapphire crystal with 3 layers of anti-reflective coating. The dial features a floating red military time ring printed on the underside of the crystal, visible if you look for it, invisible if you don't. Honest, if slightly theatrical. The honest criticism is that the Sellita SW2001 is not an exotic movement. This is a watch that's been run over by military hardware and then fitted with the same movement as a lot of watches half its price. Collectors on Watch You Seek flag this. It's a fair point, but that's it. The INOX. Carbon is not a luxury watch pretending to be a tool watch. It's a tool watch that happened to get built in Switzerland and carry a Swiss-made label on the dial. Nobody else is putting carbon cases and automatic movements through 130 standardized durability tests at this price. You pay around $1,300 to $1,400 for the carbon automatic version, and you get something that would survive conditions that would destroy essentially every other watch in this video. That's what real durability looks like. The next one? It takes durability and adds something else entirely. And on that note, we are back to the main list. Number 8. Christopher Ward C. 60 Trident Lumiere. There's a dial in this watch that cost Christopher Ward 4 times what their standard dial cost to produce. 12 individually sculpted blocks of a ceramic material called Globalite XP, made by the same Swiss company that produces Super Luminova, are set into the hour positions. They don't have lume painted on them. They are lume. Solid blocks of it. And they're beveled and chamfered on every face. Christopher Ward launched the C60 Trident Lumiere in August 2024, and the watch community noticed immediately. The case is 41 millimeters, grade 2 titanium, 10.85 millimeters thin. That thinness is the story. Most dive watches at this water resistance rating, 300 meters with a helium escape valve, are brick-shaped. The Lumiere sits flat on the wrist. It'll go under a cuff. The movement enabling this is the Sellita SW3001, which is 1 millimeter thinner than the SW2001 and COSC certified, meaning it runs to -4 plus 6 seconds per day. Power reserve is 56 hours. In 2024, the watch won Christopher Ward's own Internal Watch of the Year award. More tellingly, on the Christopher Ward Community Forum, members who had previously owned Tudor Pelagos, 39s, and Omega Planet Oceans were posting direct comparisons, and not always pointing toward the more expensive Swiss watches. The C60 Trident Lumiere on titanium bracelet launched at around $2,000. The Omega Planet Ocean, it's being compared to costs 4 times that. Here's the thing I keep coming back to. The lume dial on this watch cost 4 times what a standard dial costs. Christopher Ward ate that manufacturing cost and kept the retail price where it is. That's a direct-to-consumer brand using its margin advantage not to pocket the difference, but to build something better. The people who buy tool watches for the tool, not the brand name, have noticed. And there's an interesting footnote to all this. Christopher Ward turned 20 years old in 2024. The Lumiere was one of the watches they released to mark the occasion. In 2 decades, this brand went from selling mid-range watches on the internet to releasing a titanium dive watch with a 4 times more expensive than standard dial that makes experienced collectors question why they're paying a Swiss premium elsewhere. That trajectory is its own kind of story. Value done right. But what's next is where value and legacy collide. Number 7. Seiko Prospex SPB 143. In 1965, Seiko built their first dive watch, the 6217 to 8000, known as the 62 MAS. It was Japan's contribution to the dive watch conversation. It is slim, quietly designed, and functional. It never got the cultural foothold in the West that Rolex and Blancpain built, partly because the Japanese domestic market was the priority, and partly because the watch world had already decided that Swiss equals serious. 55 years later, Seiko brought the 62 MAS back. The SPB 143 is a 40.5mm modern reinterpretation, 13.2mm thick, 47.6mm lug-to-lug. These numbers put it in the actually wearable category, rather than the technically a wristwatch category that Seiko occupied through much of the 2010s. The movement is the 6R35, a 70-hour power reserve automatic that's Seiko's workhorse caliber for the mid-range. Accuracy sits at -15 plus 25 seconds per day, which is not going to impress Metis engineers, but is more than adequate for daily use. What makes collectors stop and look is the DiaShield coating and the slightly domed sapphire crystal that echoes the style of the original 62 MAS. On a Watch You Seek thread from 2020 that has been added to for 5 years straight, one collector wrote, "You know that feeling when a beautiful girl walks past you on the street and gives you a glance and you feel your heart miss a beat? This is how I describe seeing this watch in person." That is obviously hyperbole, but it's honest hyperbole. The SPB 143 has proportions, and finishing that at $1,200 make experienced collectors do a double take. It went into Seiko's Luxe tier. The gray dial against the brushed bezel insert creates a kind of calm confidence that most dive watches at twice the price struggle to achieve. So why is it at number 7? Because the 6R35 movement, while reliable, isn't exceptional. The bracelet has been criticized consistently on Watch You Seek across multiple ownership threads. And in 2024, Seiko released the SPB 453, a direct update with improved proportions and a traditional 430 date position. If you're buying new, you might look at both. But if you want the one that started the conversation, the SPB 143 remains one of the most honest watches Seiko has ever made. Seiko took 55 years of history and distilled it into 40.5mm. The next brand took 80 years of field watch history and did something similar. Number 6, Hamilton Khaki Field Expedition. Ask anyone who's been in the watch hobby longer than a year which field watch they'd recommend under $1,000, and a significant percentage will say Hamilton. Ask which Hamilton, and most of them will land somewhere in the Khaki Field family. The Expedition is the most recent, and honestly the most complete, version of that argument. Hamilton released the Khaki Field Expedition in late 2023 in 2 sizes, 37mm and 41mm. Both feature the H10 automatic movement with an 80-hour power reserve. That number matters. 80 hours means you can take it off Friday night and put it back on Monday morning, and it's still running. Most automatics stop after 38 to 42 hours. Hamilton achieves the extended reserve through a reworked gear train and a Nivacron titanium alloy hairspring that also happens to be more resistant to magnetic fields and temperature changes. The Expedition added a screw-down crown, which earlier Khaki Field models didn't have, bringing water resistance to 100 meters. There's a rotating compass bezel designed to work with the sun for navigation, a screw-down caseback, sapphire crystal with anti-reflective treatment. On paper, this is a 50-year-old Geneva brand's descendant of military field watch lineage, updated with everything a working field watch should have. The price starts at $995. Honestly, I'd argue this is the best value mechanical watch in this video. Not the most interesting, not the most technically ambitious, but the most complete. A Watch You Seek reviewer, who's owned it since launch, wrote that he now reaches for it more than any other watch in his collection, precisely because there's nothing to think about. Screw the crown down, put it on, don't think about it again for 4 days. There's also something worth mentioning that the marketing doesn't dwell on. The Expedition looks like it's been somewhere. Not worn out, finished. The brushed steel case has an utilitarian quality that communicates intent. It's the watch equivalent of a well-broken-in boot. You don't want it too perfect, because perfect watches sit in safes. This one's meant to be in the field. And at this price, with these specs, you don't need to be precious about it. That's what a field watch is supposed to do. This one does it better than any other Hamilton has before. Hamilton proved 80 hours can be a selling point. The next watch proved accuracy can be a religion. Number 5. The Citizen Atessa CB021518L. I want you to think about what it means for a watch to set itself. Not in the sense of an automatic winding from your wrist movement. In the literal sense, you travel from Lagos to London, you land, you hold the watch near a window, and within minutes, it's displaying the correct local time in all 26 time zones. It tracks because it received a radio signal from an atomic clock and updated itself automatically. You did nothing. Then think about the fact that it runs entirely on light. Any light. Indoor lighting, cloud-filtered daylight, anything. The solar cell charges a power cell inside the watch. No battery to change. Ever. Citizen has been building eco-drive movements since 1976, and the technology has reached a point where a fully charged Atessa will run for months in complete darkness. The CB021518L is part of Citizen's Unite with Blue limited series. It uses super titanium and DLC coating in black. The case diameter is 42.5 millimeters, 10.1 millimeter thin, sapphire crystal, atomic timekeeping, perpetual calendar, power reserve indicator. The forensic flaw? The leather strap, specifically EcoPet, a recycled material, is a significant downgrade from what the watch itself deserves. And several reviewers on Citizen's website who've owned the watch for years note the strap shows wear long before the watch does. An aftermarket replacement is straightforward, but shouldn't be necessary at over $1,000. Honestly, this is the entry where I find myself most conflicted. The Atessa solves problems that the mechanical watch community has collectively decided aren't worth solving, because mechanical is romantic and atomic timekeeping is utilitarian, and the hobby prefers romance. But I keep coming back to a simple question. If you could only have one watch, and you wanted it to always be accurate, never need a battery, never need to be set, resist scratches better than steel, and disappear on your wrist because it's light enough to forget, which category of watch actually answers that? Not the romantic one, but the movement, the accuracy, the fact that you never change a battery, never manually set the time, and wear a super titanium case that will outlast most mechanical watches on this list without scratching. That's an argument for this watch that's hard to counter. Citizen has been making the most technically sophisticated mass-market watches in the world for decades. The watch press mostly ignores them because they're not mechanical. That's the watch press's problem, not Citizen's. Citizen solved the battery problem 50 years ago. The next brand solved a different problem, the magnet problem. Number 4. Tudor Black Bay 41 Metas. You've heard about this problem without maybe knowing it as a problem. Your phone is a magnet. Your laptop is a magnet. Your car door lock, your credit card reader, your bag clasp, the airport security scanner. All of them carry magnetic fields that can pull at the hairspring of a mechanical watch, causing it to gain or lose significant time. Most mechanical watches offer some protection. A standard soft iron inner case will handle everyday exposure. The Tudor Black Bay 41 was tested to withstand 15,000 Gauss. For context, an MRI machine operates at between 10,000 and 30,000 Gauss. The Tudor Black Bay 41 was certified by MITAS, the Swiss Federal Institute of Metrology, to keep functioning with precision inside that kind of field. It's one of only a handful of watches outside Omega's master chronometer range that holds this certification, and Tudor achieved it through the use of a silicon balance spring in their in-house MT5602U movement, which is produced in part by Kenissi, a movement maker that Tudor partially owns. Tudor launched the black monochrome version of the Black Bay 41 Metas at Watches and Wonders 2024. Collectors on Watch You Seek described it as the most complete version of the Black Bay since the original Burgundy model. It is thinner than its predecessors at 13.6 millimeters, with the T-fit clasp on the bracelet allowing tool-free micro-adjustment and a tapering to 16 millimeters at the clasp. It wears closer to a 39 millimeters on most wrists than to a 41. At Watches and Wonders 2024, the price on the rubber strap was $4,225. On the 5-link Jubilee bracelet, $4,550. You're paying for a COSC-certified, META-certified, manufacture movement Swiss automatic with 200 meters of water resistance and a 70-hour power reserve. In the context of what Rolex charges for their Submariner, which has no META certification and less power reserve, the Tudor has extraordinary value. Collectors know this, which is why the gray market price on the Tudor hasn't drifted far below retail. A Watch You Seek thread from April 2024 opened with one member writing, "This is finally the modern Black Bay we've been asking for." The reply count hit 400 within a week. For a watch forum, that's the equivalent of a standing ovation. What people kept returning to wasn't the price, or even the META certification. It was how it wore. Slimmer than the old Black Bay, the T-fit clasp, adjustable by hand without tools, the bezel sitting closer to the dial. A collector who owned a Rolex Submariner alongside it noted that the lug-to-lug measurement came within a millimeter of the 124060 across the bezel. Same real estate on the wrist. Different story on the receipt. The Tudor proved that Swiss precision can also be Swiss value. The next watch proved something entirely different, that the future of accuracy doesn't require a mechanical movement at all. Before we move on to the next part, let me tell you this. Most people don't realize this, but buying a watch the wrong way can cost you thousands, and you won't even notice it until it's too late. You walk into a store or browse online, and everything looks the same, but behind the scenes, there's a system. Prices aren't always fair, availability is controlled, and one bad decision can leave you overpaying for something that doesn't even hold its value. That's why I created a complete free insider guide to buying watches. Inside, you'll find the best watches to buy, the watches to avoid, and how to choose a watch that actually fits your style and budget long-term. The goal is simple. I'll help you stop guessing and start buying smart. You'll find the free guide in the pinned comment and description. Now, let's move on to the next part. Number 3, Casio Oceanus OCW T200, the Shadow King. Here is something that should not be possible at the price. The OCW T200 is a Japan domestic market Casio. You cannot walk into most Western watch stores and buy it. You order it from Japan, Shopping in Japan, Ippo Japan, gray market sellers on Chrono 24, and it arrives in a box that contains a watch with a finishing quality that collectors genuinely struggle to explain to people who haven't seen it in person. Zaratsu polishing. The same technique used on Grand Seiko dials, applied to the case and bracelet of a watch that costs between $300 and $500. Zaratsu is a specific method of polishing that uses specialized machinery to create mirror flat surfaces with almost zero distortion. When you hold a Grand Seiko to a light source, the case surfaces look like glass. When you hold the OCW T200 to the same light, the effect is comparable. The two broke watch snobs review called it the T200 at the pinnacle of Japanese tech watch. Not for the movement technology, but for the manufacturing finish on a watch at this price point. On the movement side, the watch runs on a solar-powered quartz module, caliber 5596, that syncs to atomic timekeeping via both Bluetooth and multiband 6 radio signals from 6 atomic reference clocks around the world. It never needs a battery change. In conditions where radio signal isn't available, the Bluetooth sync via the Oceanus smartphone app picks up the slack. The watch is accurate to an atomic standard. On a solar-powered quartz movement, in a case finished like a watch that costs 15 times more. The dimensions are 41.4 millimeters wide, 10.7 millimeters thick. It slides under a cuff. It works for a business meeting, and it works for a dive. 100 meters of water resistance, sapphire crystal with anti-reflective coating. The reason it's not at number 1 is purely practical. It's genuinely difficult to buy outside Japan, and the lack of Western distribution means after-sales support is limited. If you're comfortable importing, the value proposition here is almost irrational. If you need a warranty from a local dealer, look elsewhere. But if the question is, which watch on this list gives you the greatest ratio of visual quality to price paid? The Oceanus answers that question without a contest. Japan built a near-perfect watch and then kept it mostly to themselves. Germany built something different, a near-perfect tank. Number 2, G-Shock GMW B5000D. In 1983, Casio released the DW 5000C, the original G-Shock, a watch designed by an engineer named Kikuo Ibe, who reportedly got the idea after watching a colleague's watch shatter when dropped, and spent 2 years developing a watch that could survive a 10-meter drop onto concrete, 100 meters of water, and 10 years of battery life simultaneously. The case design, that distinctive square, became the face of the company. For G-Shock's 35th anniversary in 2018, Casio applied the full metal treatment to that original square shape. The result was the GMW B5000 series, stainless steel exterior and interior case, with fine resin cushioning material between them to absorb shock, maintaining the core G-Shock engineering principle while wrapping it in metal that reads as dress casual from across a room. The DLC-coated screw-lock caseback provides additional wear resistance, tough solar charging from light, multiband 6 radio time correction, Bluetooth smartphone link, all of it in a case 49.3 millimeters wide and 13 millimeters thick. The paradox of the GMW B5000 is that it looks like jewelry and functions like a survival instrument. Collectors on Watch You Seek have worn them to formal dinners and construction sites in the same week. At $550, it's the most expensive G-Shock most people will ever buy, and simultaneously one of the most durable objects on this list. Honestly, I'm not sure I buy the argument that the GMW B5000 is a dress watch. Put it next to anything with actual finishing quality and the limitations of a production LCD display show. But as a daily utility instrument that can double for semi-formal situations when you're not under scrutiny, it does something no other watch at this price does. It survives everything and still looks intentional. One thing that doesn't get discussed enough, the bracelet. The dimensioned links with their specific surface pattern echo the original DW 5000C's resin band, just in metal. It's a quiet piece of design fidelity that takes a few weeks of ownership to notice. Once you notice it, you don't stop noticing it. The G-Shock proved the most durable object isn't always the most obvious one, which brings us to the watch that proves the best EDC isn't always the watch you'd expect. Number 1, Casio Oceanus OCW T200. Think about the person who built a 10-watch collection over 15 years. A dive watch for the water, a field watch for travel, a dress watch for the office, a G-Shock for the gym, a mechanical piece for the weekends, 5 more for the reasons collectors always find. Now think about what that costs to service, what it costs in time spent thinking about which watch to wear. The mental overhead of ownership spread across a case full of pieces, each one requiring attention, each one communicating something slightly different about who you are that day. The EDC collector in 2025 isn't building collections, they're editing them down to one watch that does everything, wears everywhere, needs nothing, and survives the life you're actually living, rather than the life you imagine on press release photos. No watch on this list is perfect for everyone, but if I had to identify the one that comes closest to the ideal, it's the watch that gets the finishing right, and the technology right, and the size right, and the durability right simultaneously. The Casio Oceanus OCW T200. Grand Seiko finishing, solar-powered atomic accuracy, never needs a battery, never needs to be set, slides under a cuff, survives 100 meters of water, $300 to $500 depending on where you source it. I keep coming back to one specific observation. The watch collector community decided decades ago that quartz movements are inferior to mechanical ones, and priced them accordingly. The Oceanus is the reductio ad absurdum of that logic. A watch with finishing quality that rivals pieces at 15 times the price, sold cheaply because it runs on solar-powered quartz, which the market has decided to undervalue. The people who've discovered it understand this. The people who haven't yet are still paying for prestige. The watch that renders your collection obsolete usually costs less than the collection did. Find one, import it, put everything else in a drawer for a month. See what you actually miss. If this made you think about your collection differently, what's the one watch you'd keep if you could only keep one?